Hello and welcome back to step one of the M1070 M1000 trailer. I'm your host Jacques, and today we're going to be seeing what the heck I did with this model at this point. So when we last left, we were waiting for this to finish gluing up. We did that. I applied some putty, and I was just using some real basic Tamiya basic type putty. Puttied this up. I also went through and puttied up the seams on these two arms, basically because they're going to be very visible. You want them to look good. Dive right into it. I like using sponges when I can because they conform for these curves, but doesn't always work. So when that doesn't work, I break out my metal tools, in this case my knife, and this is basically just to clean up that seam that is going to be visible pretty prominently in the front of the trailer after this is built. And the sad part of it all is that I'm cleaning up a lot of area that doesn't have anything to do with the seam. It's the age-old problem of applying the putty and it smears all over, and then how do you clean it all off? Some people like to use like a Q-tip with something in it, alcohol or water, depending on what kind of putty you're using. And I'm sure that all works well for those who do that. I haven't dabbled into that yet myself. I probably will. The only problem that I've had in the past in using some sort of a smoothener while it's still soft enough to be affected is that then it seems to continue shrinking and you still have the seam, and you have to go back and putty again, and then do you have to smooth it out again, and then you have more shrinkage, etc., etc. So I've now roughed that in. And I'm just successively sanding that down. There we go, smooth. Now we go back to this step up here with these two parts. So we've got this here, they're going in the front face. Now it says 7mm. If I really want to be precise about it, I've got my caliper. And I can sit and make marks and do all that, and just to show that it can be done, I'll do it. But personally, no, this is not something I do. So with that laying there, that's about the middle. And I've got my two marks. And that's the center of where I will be putting those parts, not the edge of each. So right in the front, right in the center. Grab my forceps. Make sure, by the way, one side is blank and slightly curved. The other one has the two bolts on it. Make sure you put the right side out. Now I will say that I wouldn't get too bent up about this particular detail unless you know something I don't. When people are looking at this, I don't think they're going to be zeroing in on if those are evenly spaced and how well they look. I could be wrong on that, so take that with a grain of salt or for what it's worth. But I'm going to say that at this point right now, this is ready to go. Got my nice arms on the sides. That's done. Another trick you can do, if you still want this to be nice and flat, you can go through with the cement after you're done and just run it over the plastic like so. Help to blend everything in. Some of these putties will respond to that. But gives it more continuity if that's what you want. So I'm going to go through on this. Now I want to make sure, and I want to make sure that when I'm doing this with parts, I'm not doing this and there's like a kneaded ridge or something normal, and I'm going to scrape that off. That would be kind of dumb. But this does not require it, so now with this being flat, what I'm noticing is that when the parts go together, there is definitely some I don't even know what to call it, slight change in elevation. Sounds kind of silly. The parts don't completely match up exactly. That's why you've got this little band of putty in here and in here. Either they dip down, maybe there's a slight angle to the mold so that they can demold it easier so it's not perfectly 90 degrees. Maybe when it got glued together, didn't quite match up. But regardless, it's getting taken care of now. And then any slop over, this is one to take care of it as well. Didn't putty this on purpose, and I don't want to mess up any detail that's actually on here. And this is just good old-fashioned using the number 11 blade to scrape. Just be careful. As with everything, be careful. Now I could also use the big sander for this, but I get the feeling that because of the hardness of the putty, it would take it longer with the sponge. And I don't want to use anything as aggressive as a larger file. Small file, again, would probably take a while. And since these are flat plates, I figured what the heck. And I'm kind of leaving all this stuff on the instructions on purpose so you can see, you know, it takes a fair amount of work. It's a fair amount of stuff. Be careful not to break the ends. Basically these parts here and all this stuff that you have already built that's all dried. All right, so that's the rough part. Now I'm going to go through and check all the edges where I've been, just to make sure that I've gotten any putty that went over, because you don't want that there later on. You start painting and you're like, oh geez, where'd that come from? Got to repaint again, smooth it all out. It's a pain. And this is, again, just roughing out, getting rid of the worst stuff. And then we go progressively down the line, take the file, the small triangular file in this case. Nothing there. Yep, very basic. Looks good. And this helps because when you're using the knife, you usually don't get that 90 degrees to the plastic parts either, and so, sorry, the camera's moving there. Yeah, right now can't feel anything. And that's good, because that's why we puttied it in the first place. That's good. Kind of boring, I know. It's sanding. But with this rock solid, then your base is solid for the truck going forward. So that when all the details are put on, and believe me, I took a look ahead, there are some crazy details that are going to be going into this. You're going to end up with something like this. It's going to have some amount of putty in it just because of the way that the parts are. But, you know, I mean, there it is. Good to go. Ready to rock and roll. Nice. We'll do the same thing with this one quicker. When I'm doing this, I try and come at it from 2 different angles just to make sure I'm not unintentionally bending the blade away from it. Now, one other thing that I could do with that if I was worried about it is I could take that large sponge sander and run over it. I'll do it with this one instead, and that should help smooth anything out that is missed. You know, doing this while trying to keep it in the camera is actually harder than I expected. Don't you worry. We're just sitting here enjoying building this model together. And hopefully you're picking up a few hints how to build it so your build is a little more easy to do, enjoyable than mine. You'll see where all the little tricks are. Or whatever, or maybe you just enjoy listening to somebody talk with you while you're building. Same thing. Doesn't matter to me. I'm having fun doing it. Makes me think through what I'm doing. And that's important. So I'm cleaning off all the putty that I can. Now, I don't know if you can tell or not, but most of this is the putty. There is a little bit of the tan, and that's where I think that, you know, the plastic isn't exactly 100%, 90 degree to itself. I think they put a slight bevel to it to get it out of the molds. And like I stated before, these parts are kind of important. They're kind of visible. So you don't want them to have a seam in them or look kind of crummy. But it's a lot of work. I'm off camera here. I'm kind of covered in bits. Now, I know I said I was going to use the sponge, but I'm going to use this first just to square this up, check my edges. Like right there. trying to keep this in the camera for you. Just running this with the file. I'm being careful of the areas that have detail, in this case well detail. It would have been nicer if I'd have just been careful and not put any putty there, but apparently I didn't, so. Anyhow, getting done. I hope you can see how it's going through and just kind of catching some of the stuff that the knife didn't, smoothing it out. Okay, how about this? Okay, what do you do when your file is all full of gunk and you want to refurbish it? Well, I've got a couple of different ways I do that. One is just to go through and clean it out physically. You know, take the end of a knife, for example, and run through the grooves. It's very tedious, but it can get the job done. So there's number two. So just like this, going through and pick, 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 pick. Another one I can do is just rub it like so, clean the gunk out. You can use like a wire brush. Third one is you can put it in an ultrasonic cleaner with some cleaner of some sort, depending on what you use. And that has worked well as well. Just depends on what you want to do and how you want to do it. Okay, so now that we've got our parts, I'm going to clean this up so we can see this again. You can see there's quite a bit of stuff, but that's the price you pay for beauty, I guess. And here's the orange brush, or the orange sander. And what this will do is this will knock off some of the harsh edges or any, you know, if there's a little filing sticking up, little edges. I mean, that's about what it is. Everything should be fairly good, but this just kind of cleans it up a little bit better. I like it anyways. And I'm not having to do a lot. But this makes sure nothing's sticking up. Not everybody likes these sponge sanders. It's okay. You can do what's comfortable for you. This is just what I like doing. Sometimes you gotta find the angle. All right, I'm liking it. So here's the instructions, full of all that gunk. Dump it in the garbage. And voila, clean. Now, this gets to be the interesting part of juggling. We've got to put these two pieces on, like so, over these piston ends that are sticking up now. Careful not to mess with that, although that is dried pretty well. We are putting this piece in the middle. This does not have direction, so that's nice. The part in the back does have direction, so it has to go like that with that little lip going towards this piece here. And this also has direction. We started building right there like so. So those all have to go together like that. And I got these swapped. There we go. So what I'm going to do is start with one side. There are 3 parts that need to go on in 4 holes. So 1, 2, 3 doesn't have to be solid, just has to get started. There's 1. There's 2. And here is 3. Okay, you heard that little snap. And there's nothing broken, it just was catching on that piece above. Okay, there's that. Now, no cement on this piston right there. And if you guys remember, I accidentally cemented that right there, and I'm glad that I'm remembering that now. So what I'm doing is smoothing this out with the knife from the roughness of the glue that I put in there last time. That's smoothing it out. Now, if I feel like there's any problem with that, I can go back with the file. But at this point, it looks okay. Everything looks smooth, and I don't have a lot of problems with that. Leave that laying flat. I'm going to check this. Yeah, I'm going to smooth this out too. Now, I like to do this with the knife just because it allows me more control, keeps things... I'm not taking as much off. I feel like with the file I'm taking more off than I should. So with this glued on, I'm going to put this in right there and then put that on there, not gluing it. No cement in here. Now, it's right there that it says no cement for those two, not down here and here. But it is no cement. So that goes on there like that. That goes on there like that. This is in where it belongs. I haven't broken any of my pipe fittings. What's holding this all together? These connections right in here, which is why they're important. So I'm going to go here. Set up my glue. This one I'm going to put on the piston, assuming, there we go, it'll fit. I'm going to go and set that up there, and then I'm very carefully going to start working all these little pieces into there, and there we have it. It's all hooked together. Now, this is not solidly glued, as you might guess. But since I've got it like this, I can start putting some glue in the seams to really start seating it. It doesn't want to perfectly seat at first, probably because, you know, there's a little bit of edging with the plastics or something. But by getting the glue in the whole seam, if that makes sense, along the whole edge, top and bottom, now you can see that this kind of came apart, so it's pivoting. Okay, so what do you do with this? I want this to stay like this. I don't want it to fall apart, but I also don't want to pinch it together. How the heck do you do that? Well, I've got some clamps like this. Might just be wide enough, maybe. Now, don't even have to clamp them. But you do one side, you got to do the other. There's that one. So now I've got them clamped together, holding it together, and now I want to look on the bottom and make sure, yep, they're clamped together, they're not spreading the bottom apart, so it's not squeezing it on top and bending it. Everything's in there, nice and tight, the way that we want it. maybe a little too tight. I don't know. There we go. That looks good. So now we've done everything in step 1. Got this all together. So once this dries, we'll have these parts on. All the seams will have been dealt with. Everything feels really nice, so I'm not feeling any seams. So you can see that some putty was needed to make these beams that they are look as good as they do. And if in the future, once this is done, you need to do anything with the surface for whatever reason it may be, you can run some model glue along this to smooth this out, or bring it together, whatever you need. But there you have it, the end of step 1. We'll be moving on to step 2 in the next video. See you there.